Sure.
Okay, now because I'm sharing my screen, I can't, I can only see a subset of the people who are here. I don't know how many people have logged in, but I want to thank those of you who are here for being here. I am going to make a promise to you right now, and that promise is that I have absolutely no intention of killing you by PowerPoint. However, I do not make any kind of a promise whatsoever about not torturing you slowly by PowerPoint. But I do guarantee that you will survive, okay?
Okay.
We're here today to talk about the future history of our congregation and Unitarian Universalism. And I've subtitled my presentation, Reflections of a Former Nun, N-O-N-E. Because as we'll see shortly, the nuns are becoming a very important category on the religious landscape of the United States. So now, by way of introduction, in the mid to late 19th century, Karl Marx, Mel Durkheim, and Max Weber, who are absolute titans in the history of the modern social and behavioral sciences, all predicted for differing reasons that with industrialization, urbanization, increasing public education and access to even higher education, that religion was destined to at best become a marginalized institution, and at worst, perhaps even go extinct. And as it turns out, these predictions were remarkably prescient. But the United States has been a significant outlier in that secularization process. For decades, the US appeared to be the exception to the prediction of the marginalization of religion, because we had very high rates of affiliation with Christian institutions, of religious institutions, particularly Christian institutions, and even very high rates, significantly high rates of active participation in religious events and activities. But as it would turn out, it looks like the US has finally boarded that secularization train. Religious affiliation is faltering in the United States, and participation is taking a nosedive. By 2019, the nuns, again, that's N-O-N-E-S, represented the fastest growing category in religious classification in the United States. So what I'm going to do today is to look at the demography of religious participation and religious identification, and look at some of and consider some of the implications of this changing democracy for Unitarian Universalism as a denomination, and more specifically for congregations like our own in Las Cruces. Now, Eileen and I know the nuns category really well. We were both raised as Mormons in the Latter-day Saint tradition in Utah, but left that tradition shortly after we married. And then for the next 40 years, we were happily members of the nuns group. But that all changed in about 2012 when we embraced Unitarian Universalism and joined the UUCLC. So I'm able to speak about the topic as not only a former Mormon, but as a former nun. So what I want to do now is look at, I just quickly want to reference my sources. The data that I'm using for this presentation comes from the National Opinion Research Council General Social Survey, the 2017-2018 iteration. And that's a survey that has been conducted every other year since about 1972 by the National Opinion Research Council. And it usually involves about 3,000 participants. I'm also going to be using data from the Pew Research Center's Religious Landscape Survey. That's a survey that involves a whopping 12 to 15,000 participants, and that's held annually. Then there's data on the 2020 Census of American Religion from the Public Religion Research Institute. I'll also be using the results of, I'll be taking data from the UUA. And then finally, I'll be using the results of the congregational survey that we conducted in our church as part of the ministerial search process in 2017 and 2018. And that particular instrument netted us 150 usable participants for a 77% response rate, which is pretty good for a lengthy and detailed questionnaire. I'd also like to thank Shirley Davis and Steve Hitchka for providing me on an ad hoc basis additional information as they responded to my panicked pleas for more information. Okay. So this is the results of the General Social Survey from the National Opinion Research Council. And what this does is it provides an overview of the changing rates of identification with various religious traditions. And as you can see, and can you see these numbers at all, folks?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see them.
I'm not seeing them, so I must be doing something wrong here.
It should be very clear, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would think so, but
Yes, I see that.
it says you are viewing Dave Steele's screen, but then all I see is Carol, for example. So I'm picking. Okay.
Oh, you have to, Dave. You've got to go to the view options at the top of your screen, and click on I think the speaker, and then that will show me, and my slide is part of the slides are part of that.
I'm with you. I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
But as you can see, for evangelical Protestant groups, that the rates of identification have been pretty consistent with a slight downward trend between 1978 and 2018. They haven't been growing a lot, but they also haven't been shrinking a lot. That's not the case with the mainline Protestants, however. And the mainline Protestant churches would be the Methodists, the Episcopalians, the non-evangelical Lutherans, Presbyterians, and groups such as that. But the mainline Protestant groups were equivalent to the evangelicals, exceeded the evangelicals in 1978. But by 2018, after a steady slide, they're down to just 11% of the proportion of people who admit to a religion in the United States. The Black Protestant groups have been holding their own with just a very slight drop off. The Catholics have been holding their own for the most part with a slight drop off. And the Jewish affiliation has also been holding its own. The others, which would include us, we're always, the Unitarian Universalists are always lumped in with the other smaller denominations. We have been essentially holding our own, plateaued at between 4 and 6% in that 40-year period. But if you look at the nuns at on the very bottom row, you see that their proportion has been increasing over the years. For a couple of decades, they were in at 7%. They jumped to 13% in 98. 16% in 2008, and in 2018, they accounted for 24% of the American population. Now, who are the nuns? Okay, the nuns are atheists, agnostics, and people who claim no religious affiliation. Okay. And the atheists and the agnostics account for about 10% of the total. The no religious affiliation is the largest group. And it's really interesting, if you look at the atheists and the agnostics and compare them to the no religious affiliation, you see that they come from a different subset of the American population. The atheists and the agnostics tend to be better educated, they tend to be wealthier, they tend to be more socially engaged in general in American civic life. They are more likely to be members of other kinds of voluntary organizations. And the people who claim no religious affiliation tend to be a little lower on the educational attainment scale, and vote with a lower frequency. So they're two different groups of people. But again, the nuns have grown from approximately 38 million people. Let's see.
10 years.
I can't. It covers my screen. So you, huh? 2008 to 68 million in 2018. Okay, so we're going to look at the nuns in a variety of ways to see just who these people are. And as you can see from this slide, by generation, that the silent generation accounts for about 10% of the people who claim no religious affiliation. And the baby boomers, those of us who were born between 1946 and 1964, account for 17%. The Gen X generation, people born between 65 and 80, account for 25%. Of them are claimed to be not affiliated with any religious group at all. And then the millennials, those born between 1981 and 96, 40% of those folks do not admit to being members of any particular religious group. So it's a very, very large segment of that generational population. Okay. Now, in terms of education, we see that nuns exist at all levels of educational attainment. And we also see from the data presented on this table that they have been growing as a proportion of that particular category over the past 4 decades. From 5% in 78 to 19% in 2018. High school graduates again moved from 5% to 20%. And then we get into those who have attended college or technical and trade schools, and they have increased from 8 to 24%. And then people with bachelor's degrees and postgraduate degrees have gradually increased over this time period up to about 24% each. So the nuns tend to be a bit better educated than the nuns who are disproportionately better educated than the wider population. We look at marital status and child status. We see that those people who are neither married nor have children are the most likely to admit to being non-affiliated with any religion. But as people marry and as they have children, there is a smaller proportion of those folks who end up in that particular category. Now, looking at, there's been one study that I was able to find that that looked at the same panel of people over a 4-year period to see how stable their position was about religion. And if we, and again, that's the only study that I've been able to find. I'm sure that there are others. But in this particular study, what we find is that those who had no particular religious affiliation in 2010, when resurveyed 4 years later, 62% of those people still claimed to be not an adherent to any particular religion. And if they did switch, they are most likely to switch to either a Christian tradition or another faith tradition. Now, the atheists were they were the most stable in terms of their position. So if they claimed to be an atheist in 2010, 81% of those folks still classified themselves as atheists 4 years later. And if they made any kind of a switch at all, it was a switch into the no religious affiliation category. The agnostics were a little bit more wishy-washy, and with 55% of those who claimed to be an agnostic in 2010 still being in that category 4 years later. But if they were to switch, they were most likely to switch into the atheist category. Okay, so let's turn now to Unitarian Universalism in the US and to our own congregation. And I'm using, for this particular set of data points, I'm using 2012 as, for most of the time, as my baseline year, for no other reason than that is the year that Eileen and I joined the church. And that's the time period that we have, sort of a personal experience with our participation in Unitarian Universalism. Okay. Now, between 1978, if you look at this chart, you see there's been on the top row, a modest increase in the number of congregations from 991 to 1,027 in 2020. You also see that in terms of adult membership, that there was a gradual increase up until about 2008 in the number of people who were bona fide members of this tradition according to the UUA. But then there began to be a slide in over the decade between 2008 and 2018, and to the point now where we are down to in 2020, 152,000, about 153,000. So you can see that our denomination is minuscule by the population standards of our country, with roughly 340 million people. So there's not a lot of us. But one of the things that's interesting and perhaps really concerning is that if you look at the RE enrollment during the same period, you see that it was increasing in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and then it began to fall off in 2008. And then by 2020, it's gone from 57,650 in 2008 to only 34,000 and about 34,800 enrollees in RE. So that has been a big change in the demographic trends of our own affiliations. So there's declining number of kids, and I know that that is an area of concern that we've had in our congregation over the years. And it's, I think, given the fact that the people who have kids that are of the age to participate in RE types of activities that would be the Gen Xers and the millennials now, the older millennials, that their relative lack of participation is translating into not even sending the kids to Sunday school. Okay, now if you look at the annual membership rates for the Unitarian Universalist Association between 2012 and 2020, you see, especially if you look at adult members, you see that there has been just a steady decline in the numbers each and every year over this 9-year period. So 2012 was a baseline. We had 161,500 adult members. And in 2020, we have 152,000, roughly 153,000. So that's a drop of about 900 adult members per year, each and every year. And then again, we've already talked about the decline, the steady decline in the number of children who are enrolled in our religious education programs. Now, I don't know exact figures on our actual membership numbers during this time period. So what I'm using is pledge units as sort of a proxy measure of the relative size of our congregation. Now, again, pledge units are not individuals. A family represents a pledge unit. And some families have one person, and other families have, multiple members that are affiliated with the church. But what we see over the course of time is that there has been a gradual decline in the number of pledge units in our own congregation, which obviously has implications for the revenue that we have available to maintain the church and to sustain its various programs and activities. But one thing that is happening is there's been a gradual increase in the average, the size of the average pledge over the last several years. But it's a fairly modest increase. It's runs to about an average of 500-600 a unit increase over the previous years. But we're able to, that's made it possible for us to sort of hold our own in terms of the amount of revenue that's coming in. But the number of people who are sharing their treasure with us is decreasing over time. In terms of gender identification within our congregation as compared with the UUA at large, you see that we are a little bit more female. 69% of our members were females in 2017, 2018, identified with that gender. And the gender identification for the UUA during that same period was 62% female and 30% male in our congregation and 38% male in the congregation at large. Now, the age distribution is interesting. As you can see, in terms of people that we will arbitrarily call younger adults, those who are under the age of 50, and being of the age that I am, I can classify 50-year-olds as younger adults and get away with it. But we had in 2017, 2018, that was a fairly small number. But then we get into big increases as we increase the age profile, to the point where a couple of years ago, when we were looking for a new minister, the largest category were people between the ages of 70 and 79. They accounted for 30% of our church membership. I suspect that if we were to redo that survey today, that these numbers would shift a little bit, but we would still see that we're an elder congregation for the most part. In terms of our ethnic identity, again, we are an overwhelmingly white, non-Hispanic origin congregation at 75%. And back in when we did and I see a mistake, our ministerial search versus 88% not non-Hispanic whites for the UU national sample altogether. Hispanics, Latinx, Chicanics, and African Americans are just a very, very small percentage and have been historically. In terms of our educational attainment, this is also very interesting. If you compare our congregation with a national sample of the national UU sample, we have 26% of our congregation has bachelor's degrees. Only 20% are less than, or I'm sorry, 11% are less than a bachelor's degree. And 62% of us have postgraduate degrees. And of those, 40% have a master's degree and 33% had a doctorate of some type, MD, PhD, EDD, JD, professional degree. So we're a very highly educated congregation. And if you were to look at the modal member of our congregation during this time period, we would find that that person is a white, 66-year-old partnered woman with a master's degree and a family income of between $50,000 and $75,000 a year. So I think that makes our congregation a little less affluent than the UUA in general, where 20% of us had incomes that exceeded $100,000 a year. For the Unitarian Universalist Association in general, that percentage is 43%. Okay, let's consider some of the things that are important to us as UUs in terms of our ideology and in terms of our religious influences and development. Only 8% of the people responding to our congregational survey had been raised in the UU faith tradition or had a long, long history with the UU faith tradition. We're definitely a found religion. Nearly 60% of us come from, were raised and participated in Protestant denominations of various stripes. 15% of us came out of that nun category. Catholics accounted for about 10%. The people who considered that their prior religious affiliation was either earth-centered or pagan in its origins was 5%, and then we have that throwaway categories of others that accounts for 7%. But again, you know, we're very much a found religion. And the thing that came out of our survey is that we're 2/3 of us consider ourselves primarily as being humanists. 30% of us consider ourselves to be primarily atheist, 26% agnostic, and then it goes on down. Only let's see, 8 and 3, what was that? 21% of us considered that a theistic or deistic orientation had been of great significance to their personal development in the religious sphere. In terms of our activity levels, we for nearly half of us reported that we attended church 3 to 4 times a month. And I think that most of us who are in that category could, you know, pretty much name the other people who fit that category. And we had roughly 16% who said that they rarely went, and less than 10% who said that they never attended our religious services. And then there's some of the other activities that we asked about. But again, for those of us who are really committed members, we manifest that commitment by being in the sanctuary, quite often. Now, why are we there? What is it that we're looking for? And what you find is that the most important reason that people gave, and this is a question that people give multiple responses to, but we really value the concept of fellowship, of being with one another. We also are people of the mind. This comes from our Unitarian DNA. We crave intellectual stimulation, and that is an important reason for us to be there. We like that sense of belonging, and I think this is probably just another way of acknowledging the importance of fellowship. We like to be in a position where we're able to celebrate our common values and interests with one another. Very supportive of social justice and social action activities, and then we trail off from there for some of the other aspects of our weekly religious experience. 10%, only 10% of the respondents said Sunday worship is not important to me, and we asked a similar set of questions about the objectives for Sunday services in terms of what kinds of things we felt were really important to be stressed from the pulpit and in the messages that our lay leaders and ministerial leaders were delivering to us. And again, we see that building community, self-understanding, personal awareness and growth, and a spur to action, and promoting the sharing of common beliefs and values, and inspiring were the main things that we all acknowledged as something we were looking for and that we valued, and that kept us in the congregation and kept us coming back week after week. Okay, I don't want to get yet. I'm going to do some summarizing and speculating. And, predicting the future is a fool's errand. But if you'll permit me, I'll be foolish here for a little while. And I do not have slides. You'll be happy to know to go along with this. So you're just gonna have to listen to me drone on here for a little bit. But again, I think the fact that we are a found religion is something that we should constantly remind ourselves of and ask ourselves, what are the implications of being a member of a religious tradition where the vast majority of its members came from other places? As a consequence of that, we are really a volunteer organization. We volunteer to join and participate in this organization, and people volunteer for organizations primarily based on their sense that they are associating with people who are pretty much like them. They are associating with people who have common interests, share common values, participate in similar kinds of activities, and have had similar life experiences. And for all of our desire to be a diverse denomination and a diverse congregation, and by that, I mean ethnically diverse in terms of age and generation, socioeconomic status, and things of that sort. We still are and have historically been predominantly white, majority female, middle to upper middle class, well-educated and humanistically oriented. So I think that we can expect that the kinds of people who are going to be most easily attracted to our congregations have a similar set of backgrounds that lead them to feel comfortable, more comfortable with affiliating with Unitarian Universalism. Historically, minority people, people of color, people with lower levels of education and somewhat lower socioeconomic circumstances have not been particularly interested or attracted to our denomination. So I think that one of the takeaway messages that I have identified for myself in doing the research for this presentation is that the thing that we are most interested in as a congregation is the sense of community and fellowship. We want to be in an environment that promotes personal awareness and personal growth. We like being part of a group that values intellect and reason. And we like being surrounded by people who share an interest in liberal, progressive, social, political, and economic causes through social action and social justice. So those are the kinds of things that animate the people who become Unitarian Universalists and at our local level animate us as members of the UUCLC congregation. So the implications of this for moving forward and surviving and thriving as a congregation is, I think that it's really important that we be intentional about promoting the sense of community and fellowship and belonging. It's been difficult during the COVID period for us to be as socially responsive and as socially active with one another as we have been in the past. I mean, witness the fact that we had to postpone all of our auction events and things of that sort. But I'm wondering if we shouldn't rethink the concept of membership and the role of our membership committee, and think in terms of the membership committees as being a member service committee, and and really attending not only to trying to help with recruiting new members of the congregation, but being really intentional about the whole issue of retention and member satisfaction and well-being. When the pandemic is behind us, I think that we should, as President Gray said in her video address to the congregation today, we should start trying to think outside the box as to ways in which we can capitalize on the interests that we all have in being together and being together frequently in a variety of ways. I think that it's going to be really important for us to redouble our efforts at recognizing white privilege and the unconscionable ways that we communicate messages that make it less comfortable for people who don't share our white privilege to want to be among us and to be comfortable being among us and to be part of us. In that vein, I'm certainly hopeful that our congregation formally adopts the eighth principle, and that we all work, do the hard work that we need to do to be able to individually and collectively act on the promises of that eighth principle. In our social activism and advocacy, I wonder if people, if there are ways that we can be visible as UUs in our activism and advocacy, so that people recognize that when they see us, helping with tents for rent, for example, when they see us standing on the corner holding up signs to promote and protect the rights of women to choose and make decisions about their reproductive health. That people who are not UUs recognize that a lot of this comes from where we are and who we are as UUs. I would like to see us, I'm hoping that in the future that we can engage in more public kinds of activities at our campus that are associated with the various causes that we all feel are important and that we work on. The other thing, I wonder if we shouldn't be thinking about trying to leverage the fact that we are an older congregation in a way that will actually attract more retirees. Again, those of us who are in retirement and approaching retirement are members of generations that tend to be more likely to belong to religious organizations, service organizations, and organizations of all kinds. And if we were able to attract an increasing number of people who are trying to get away from floods, bitter cold winters, fires on the West Coast, and things of that sort, who are already UUs, that may be a way to renew the supply of people to energize our congregations. And I think here of several recent new members of our congregation, people like the Rices, the Hitchkas, the Fitzgeralds, and all the things that ways that they contribute to our church, and engage in activities, leadership activities that give those of us who have been here for a long time and have done everything, a little bit of a break. But I wonder if we couldn't get the word out better as to what a great congregation we have, and what a great place southern New Mexico is to live for those who don't want to shovel snow all winter long, or hire somebody to do it for them. Finally, I just say that I'm reminded of the parable of the sower, of the farmer in the New Testament, where the seed is thrown out. Some of the seed lands on rock or in sand and doesn't thrive, but other seed lands in fertile soil, and if it's husbanded correctly, it can grow and thrive. And maybe we should be casting more seed in more places, and looking to see where it takes root, and capitalize on that. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it until somebody convinces me that there's a better one. And I'll open it up now for discussion, if I can figure out how to get my PowerPoint off the screen. Okay. There. Okay. Questions? Hey, Jan.
Yeah, I think that a lot of your suggestions are very sound and can perhaps be of great benefit to the congregation. I'm afraid that if we keep doing the things we've always done, that we're just going to continue to lose members, and we have been losing members lately, is my understanding. I'm not on the membership committee, I don't really know, but we certainly haven't been gaining as many as we've lost. More have left than we've gotten new members. Now, the pandemic is certainly responsible for a lot of that, but when I was on the membership committee, I noticed the visitor cards that we had people fill out, and plus just personal observation. And what I saw was that we had a lot of people, younger people, BIPOC, and they didn't stay. And I think that is a reflection of our white privilege, the expectations that we hold for other people. We ask stupid questions that put them off, so that they don't feel, well, it's true, Paul, actually. I mean,
No, I agree.
we make assumptions based on the way people look, or, and then one of the reasons we changed the name of the foyer to lobby was so that we weren't so classist. That, it's just, there's a lot of language we use that is just very intellectual, very stimulating. I worked at a university. I heard all of those words and had to go out and learn them. But it's, we keep using that, and that puts off people who come, our local truck driver who doesn't buy into all the stuff that so many truck drivers do. Are you aware how many truck drivers are just rabid Christian? And Daryl discovered that when he was driving a truck. These are people that want us, that need us, but we put them off. We don't know how to communicate with them, and that's something that we need to do. And I think that working with the eighth principle, learning the ways in which we are committing microaggressions against particularly BIPOC, but also people of, not as, without the advanced education and without the, the income that everybody else has. We're putting them off. We're chasing them away. It's not a question of what they want. I think a lot of them want us, but we chase them away. And we could do better. We should do a whole lot better.
Comments? Thanks, Jan.
And the multicultural group has been looking at widening the circle of concern. And the last couple of sessions, we were talking about hospitality and inclusion. And we actually surely can maybe summarize some of the things, some of the ideas that we had. And a lot of it does go to the membership committee and the hospitality committee, and how we greet people. And, you know, are we greeting them? Are we greeting them too eagerly or not eagerly enough? Yeah, a lot of questions were raised.
Shirley?
I would just like to say, I think it's hard for us as older generations to be interested in those young people. We had young people there today. If they were 30, that's young, 40. Somehow we have to stop and listen to them, ask them questions. Hello, I think hello is so important when you see somebody you don't recognize. We all have to do it. We have a tent. I saw a new person sitting down under the tent. So that's wonderful. We need to talk to those people. I know this has been said before. I'm all for getting the younger generations here.
And the statistics would suggest that the younger generations are not particularly interested. That doesn't mean all of them, but of course, but not as a generational cohort. They're not particularly interested in organized religion. A lot of them are indicate that they have a spiritual sense and are interested in the transcendent and things of that sort. But organized religion is not high on that generational's to-do list. But
so we do read in the circle of concern that the younger generation are into justice and equity, and that they have been getting that in their schooling and their work, and they could be teaching us, I don't know how we can be inviting.
Yeah, great point, because you are correct. That is one of the characteristics of the millennial generation. They're as a cohort, that's an area of strong interest. And that does align very strongly with what we as UUs and as UUCLC church members also highly value. So.
Shirley had a very important term that you might have overlooked. She said what they can teach us.
Us.
Instead of us saying, oh, well, we'll do this and then you'll want to come. It doesn't work that way.
Other comments, questions?
Charlie.
Okay, Charlie Welch.
Dave, thank you very much. A lot of work went into that, and I thought those were most interesting statistics. Now, as we've been discussing here, the question is, how do we appeal to other people? And I think one of the things is, look at these mega churches. I mean, you've got somebody with charisma and just draws gobs and gobs of people to a new church. And we even have examples of that here in town. Now, what are they doing that is actually appealing to the people that we would like to appeal? And to tell you the truth, in my mind, part of it has to do with honesty. When we say that, for instance, we are going to conduct a worship service, everybody in the world except us understands worship to be praising some big being somewhere. And that's not what we do. When we have a service, it's not worship in terms of what the rest of the world thinks of as worship. And we talk about a faith. Why do we consider our beliefs to be a faith when we're not? Faith means you're believing in something for which there is no real support. You just believe it. That's a faith issue. And we have other kinds, and even Jan mentioned the terminology that we use. And I think if we were a bit more honest about what we really are up to, it might be more appealing to some of these outside people.
Other reactions or comments about?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on what Charlie said. The idea of not being so committed to ideology and, in other words, a part of the faith tradition I was as a Catholic, I eventually found out that a lot of that was just not valid. And whereas I came to the UU situation because I didn't have to deal with that. I mean, we should express who we are rather than using terms that are used by other religious groups.
Can I also comment about that?
Yes, Maggie.
Yeah, I just would like to say that personally, I don't believe that you have to be a deist to have a sense of worship. I think that it's kind of like when Republicans, no offense to Republicans, but the whole thing about kind of co-opting language to the point that other people feel that they can't use that language. And I think there's somewhere in between, since we're not a creedal denomination. I think it is really important to have the language be inclusive enough that some part of it, hopefully in each service or across services, resonates with people. Because I just don't think that worship is, just as an example, is specific to having to be, having a belief in a deity. I understand that's the way it's used a lot, but I don't think we need to use it that way.
Yeah, Charlie.
Just a quick response to that. I agree with what Maggie is saying. We don't have to, when we use the word, we don't have to mean what everybody else means with the word, but that means we isolate ourselves from everybody else.
Well, I have a couple of,
Susan?
probably not surprisingly, I've been thinking quite a bit about this. And I thought today's service attempted quite admirably to talk about why we consider our church important. And it had to do with living not in creed, but in covenant with one another. And that most of us would say, when you ask, would say it's the relationships with people that matter, pardon me, that matter most to us. So we have people that come to church, as Dave pointed out, 3-4 times a month, and we have some that basically don't. That isn't, but they continue to belong. So what, and it's because the new, help me, Ricky, or what was the new lady that introduced herself for the second time today? It's Ricky or Robbie, or does anybody remember? Anyway, one of my problems is
Ricky.
Pardon?
Ricky.
Thank you, Ricky. One of my problems as an older person is that I sometimes have trouble with names. which I would think would put people off. Hi, Robbie, Ricky, tell me your name again. But I think what we miss is the notion that we should have a membership committee and they should do that stuff. I don't think it works that way. I think we all have to say, that's a new person. And as they head for the door as quickly as they can, which I saw at least 3 of the new people do, we don't have to block the door, but we should be there. It shouldn't just be, oh gosh, what happened to the greeter? Gee, where are they? No, we should say, oh, I'm glad you chose to come here today. We should have something we could hand them. And I think it should have our website. It should have we spoke today about the key parts that we consider, I guess, religion. I mean, I know I consider the sources of faith that we list on our website and the principles, 7, maybe 8 in another month or so. I don't know. But that should be there with the website. We referenced that website about 4 times this morning, and yet it's not on the screen. It's not, it's not on the order of service, not on anything they could carry off with them. So
That's why we give them the newcomer packet.
But we didn't. I mean, you don't do that right away. I mean,
But they may not be doing that now, but we always have. It's
right. I mean, and that's what we haven't been doing it because we haven't been meeting.
right.
Now, if we're meeting again, new people are showing up saying, two women came, appeared to be a couple. I don't know. I don't care. But they were there to try us out. Yeah. And yet they left. And I don't think anybody blocked the door or tried to hand them something or even said, gee, I hope you come back, because they were quick. And new people are. A young woman came in late and she left before the service ended. She did not wish to have an interaction now, So I think we got to start thinking about this in a new way. I don't think Dave is wrong. I think we could continue to attract some new retirees who will move into our, but as Jan said, that's not going to keep us alive. It may keep us afloat a little while we try some of this other stuff. But well, it's bigger than a membership committee can deal with. We have to have an idea that I know a lot of you have run through the chair and you're tired and I get that, because a lot of days I feel that way. But if we want the church to be here in this community and believe that this is an important voice for justice and equity and inclusion, we believe
Jack?
that.
Okay, thanks. Jack's got his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Susan said. Before the pandemic, we were doing a good job of greeting people. Everybody's a greeter, even in the parking lot. You see somebody in the parking lot that you don't recognize, you ask, are you a visitor? And often they are, and then you accompany them to the sanctuary. We would occasionally have somebody fall through the cracks, but for the most part, that initial where everybody feels that they're a greeter, to greet people, I think is one way to make it a welcoming congregation. And that is a huge thing for having people to come back at least a second time, is to have a nice warm greeting even before they get into the sanctuary. So Susan's right, it's not the job of the greeters, it's the job of all of us to do that.
Thanks, Jack. I just want to be clear about my suggestion about the, sort of attracting more retirees. And it's precisely for the reason that you gave, and that's to help keep us afloat. I think that it's going to be a harder sell to get other people in the numbers that we need in order for us to thrive. And in the interim, I think that we need to think broadly about how can we attract people that provide energy and energy in the forms of, of being in the pulpit and helping to being in the church and being enthusiastic about being in the church and contribute to with their pledges to keeping us afloat financially, and with providing new ideas of things that have worked in other places, and quite frankly, to give some of us in the congregation who have been on every committee and chaired every committee for years and years and years, a bit of a break to re-energize themselves and to keep from burning out. And I think that we got some short-term issues and we've got some long-term issues. I personally think, based on the demographic profile of participation, affiliation, and non-participation and non-affiliation, that it's going to be a hard sell to get those truckers in any number that Jan referred to, into our doors and to be enthusiastic and feel comfortable there. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. I'm not saying that at all. Please don't think that I'm saying that. But I think that we really need to be intentional about the kinds of things that we want to do, and also discover the things that we're doing that are pushing people away, as Jan mentioned. And so I just want to be clear on where I'm coming from on that. Okay, well, we are over time. If there's no more burning comments.
Let's give David a big hand.
Thank you. Next week.
Effort into it.
Thank you. Next week, we're going to have one of the bright shining stars, the younger members of our congregation, speak to us, and that's Dr. Rihanna Thomas. And she's going to be speaking on a very timely topic. She's going to be talking about the controversy related to critical race theory and what its place is or should be in elementary education. So I really encourage you all to be present, and that again will be at 2 o'clock via Zoom next Sunday, Dr. Rihanna Thomas. So thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you.
This is a conversation that we need to continue having forever.
Right. True.
Okay, so long, everybody.
Thank you everyone for coming. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.